Good morning, viewers. Welcome to this edition of Focus on Parliament. My name is Agatha Atuhaire, your host. And as usual, we are discussing the big stories, the big Parliament matters of the week. And the biggest, I think, has been the report from a select committee that was instituted in November 2021 to investigate the alleged mismanagement of funds for the development of the COVID vaccine under the Presidential Scientific Initiative or something like that. Preside. And it is still headed by the current Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation, Dr. Monica Musenero. And on this show last week, we had the petitioner, the Ntungamo Municipality MP, Yona Msinguzi, who raised these issues on the floor of Parliament last year, which led to the select committee being instituted to investigate these matters. And that time last week, we were not able to get Dr. Musenero herself to respond to the issues that Msinguzi was raising. And also, Honorable Msinguzi had indicated that he started a censure motion against the minister. But today we have someone who says has alternative information, from the allegations that were tabled the last time we were here on this show. We also want to discuss the administration of Parliament, the irregular recruitment in Parliament over the last 1 year, the irregular procurements and subsequent dissolution of the Contracts Committee in Parliament. And I have two guests to discuss that. The first is Dr. Patrick Wakida. Dr. Patrick Wakida is the ED of Research World International. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
The second one is, the person that is an expert in discussing Parliament administration, having been a commissioner of Parliament. Was it the 6th Parliament?
Yeah.
Yes, in the 6th Parliament. Having been the IALA, that's the East African Legislative Assembly legislator, and also a person who drafted the current Administration of Parliament Act and its regulations. Honorable Dan Wandera, Ogalo, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, so we'll start with you, Dr. Wakida.
Yes.
You have been unhappy about particularly this show that had Honorable Yona Msinguzi, who tabled allegations against Dr. Musenero and the alleged mismanagement of the funds for the COVID vaccine development. What is your different information that you have in regards to that matter, especially considering that report was discussed by Parliament and resolutions passed?
Thank you very much. I would start by saying that report of Parliament fell short of the expected report. A report that had been worked on for 6 months would have looked more detailed. It lacked the fresh. If I was reviewing that report as a person, I would have given it minimal grading. I want the viewers to understand how this investigation was instituted, because everybody must understand that. Yona Msinguzi, the MP for Ntungamo, went on the floor of Parliament and made very serious allegation. Allegation number 1, that Musenero received 50 billion shillings. That was allegation number 1. And that she misused that money. Allegation number 2, that Musenero opened up a company called Preside, and that in Preside, the directors of Preside are Musenero's husband, Musenero's children, as they are on the Hansard. Allegation number 4 was that on visiting Preside, there was no activity going on in Preside. when he visited Preside, he did not even see the laboratory equipments in Preside. Those were part of the allegations. Now, from those allegations, the Deputy Speaker instituted a committee to establish the truth of the allegation. And indeed, this worked on a number of objectives, which we call the terms of reference. Term number one, to establish the progress in the development of locally manufactured COVID-19 vaccine. Objective number one. Objective number two, to establish the exact amount so far released to the research, innovation, and COVID vaccine development. Objective number three, to establish how effectively such funds had been utilized. And four, to establish the challenges that this project is facing and to inquire into any other activity. Those were the terms of reference. Now, once you have the background information, you have the objective, then you can therefore produce a report. And exactly that was there. And therefore, it's important to know from the onset what was Preside. Mr. Museveni, on the 6th of May 2020, they elected the Prime Minister. They elected the Prime Minister in writing and told him, please establish, it's in their report, a scientific think tank, the Presidential Scientific Think Tank on Epidemics, Preside, as a mechanism to fast-track research and development for locally generated essential response tools. That was a directive. Directive not given to Msenero. And if we get this from the very start, we will understand how this worked. Specifically, the initiative was to provide a technical and supervisory support to the scientists and researchers. When you have that background information, it therefore becomes easy for you to understand. By the way,
talk about the funds and how they have been utilized.
I want to come to that, and I'll reach to that. But you see, for me, I was trained to give a background information so that the listener is able to get what are we talking about. Now, 31.3 billion shillings was allocated to this initiative. 31.3 billion. I am reading the report. Provided for in financial year 2020-2021 for the scientists under Preside. For the scientists under Preside, out of which 15.78 was allocated for the purchase of equipment, and 15.2 was allocated for operational costs. I have bought you the equipment, I send you the operational money. Once we get that, then we're able to understand this story. So another 3.35 billion shillings was allocated to State House, to facilitate the secretariat. Another 3.3 billion shillings was allocated to State House. Now, I will go back and explain. The procurement of 15.787 billion shillings was actually done, according to this report. It was done directly by Ministry of Science and Technology under the supervision of the Permanent Secretary and the Minister then. It's also important for us to note here that this Msenero woman became a minister on the 21st of July 2020. The release of this money we are talking about, 2021, the release of this money we are talking about was done in 2020, before Msenero became
But
a
when
minister.
Msenero was the chairperson of Preside.
And I'm coming to that. And if you want to interview me, please don't be biased. Listen to what I say and then respond. It will help you.
No, we are not.
So it's important for people to have that background information, that you can have an organization, a project. I don't know whether you people have run a project. The ministry, in the MOU, by the way, this thing, the operationalization of Preside, was done under the MOU. In the MOU, it is very clear who was responsible for what. In fact, I am not sure you have the MOU, but I am very lucky that I have that.
I have the MOU and I have the responsibilities of Preside.
In the MOU, it is very clear who will be responsible. In fact, when you go through that MOU, you realize one thing, that the responsibility of accountability for money was put on the ministry. The responsibility of supervision and ensuring that entities that receive the money from the Ministry of Science account was put on the Mseneros, the Preside group. Now, once we get to understand that, then we go to the money. The actual money spent, 15.78, was used to purchase. It's even recorded in this report. So out of the 31.3 billion shillings, 15 billion 787 million was sent to the Ministry of Science and Technology to purchase equipment. They did that. They mentioned it in the report, my council. And that those equipments were sent to the scientists. That is a conclusion in the report. Another 13 billion shillings was sent to the scientists. But when you talk about the science, my colleague here, you are talking about Makerere University, you are talking about Uganda Virus Institute, you are talking about Sistema University, you are talking about Mbarara University, among others. The money for operationalization was sent directly from Ministry of Science and Technology to these scientists. They received the money. You can even see the EFTs which they sent the money. When you add the total amount of money, which was supposed to be 31.3 billion shillings, when you add, you don't get it. When you add the amount of money that the ministry released to the scientists and the money that the ministry used to purchase equipment, it doesn't add to that money. Now, the variance of about 2 billion shillings is unaccounted for. And if I was discussing money, I would have brought it from 31 billion to start with, and I would be discussing 2 billion shillings. It's in this report. Why I said that this report is lacking is that while they say we could not find where this money is, they spent 6 months. That's the level of incompetence. Today, as you may know, you don't carry money in your hand.
Dr.
Money,
Wakida,
yes.
In your view, who should be responsible
I am
for
coming
that
to
2 billion?
that. I'm coming to that. And please don't draw me to that, because I want to give you information
I am the
that
one
is
directing this
that's
conversation.
informative.
I have to interject
yes,
and
but
get clarifications
kindly
for the viewers' sake.
listen so you understand. Because I came here with information. I don't talk on theories.
The information you're giving us,
Now,
we have it actually. It's in the report. We read it.
Here is a question.
Yes.
And here is observation. You have gone to investigate. You have been paid as a committee member. You have even asked for extension. In this report, this is what I would be expecting. That indeed, when we interrogated, we saw that the 2 billion shillings came from, because this money was coming from Ministry of Finance to Ministry of Science and Technology. Ministry of Science and Technology was transferring this money to the science directly. My expectation, Honorable Ogalo, would have been for them to show that yes, as we've showed, as we've seen, the trail of the other money sent to the scientists, this money went to a particular individual. Now, when people come here and make an allegation of 128 billion shillings, honestly, would that be fair to the public which is listening? Because if you're talking about Mstenero worked under an MOU. An MOU strictly talks about 31.3 billion shillings. That's the money they are talking about. And the question you asked me, who is responsible, therefore, for this money? Preside, Honorable Ogalo. Preside was an umbrella of scientists working under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Money came from the Treasury, went to Ministry of Science and Technology. Ministry of Science and Technology, where there was a permanent secretary, sent this money to individual scientific groups directly. We have a trail of that. You have read the EFT. You can say Makerere University received this, Chambogo University received this. The question I have, and I've asked people, why then would you be asking Msenero to account for that money? The total amount of money for equipment, 15.7. In the report, it says the money was sent to Ministry of Science and Technology. Ministry of Science and Technology purchased the equipment. So the 15.7 out of the 31 is accounted for, isn't it? Now, the question we have is who received the other money? Money again for operationalization, which was 15.2 billion shillings, was supposed also to come straight to Ministry of Science and Technology. Ministry of Science and Technology passes this money to the recipient organization. Preside are individuals, and you see that's the confusion. Preside is a name given to this organization, to this think tank.
Under which the scientists.
But the scientists, there was no organization. If you have read this report, there is no account called Preside account which received the money. There isn't. These individuals that belong to this organization were presided over. Mstenero was appointed to preside over these people. Now, if you want to look at this as preside, you are also going to be asking which bank account did this get the money? Who sent the money from where? But this money was directly sent from Ministry of Finance to Ministry of Science and Technology and to the scientists. True or false?
Dr. Wakida.
Yes.
Dr. Msenero, in that report,
yes,
wrote to the Ministry of Finance asking for money. Is it in the report, yes or no?
You see, this is the challenge. So there was an instruction by the president to the Minister of Finance, asking the Minister of Finance to work out with the Minister of Science and Technology to set up a think tank. In that letter, if you have it, the instruction was that I have appointed Msenero to preside over. Now, if Msenero wrote a letter,
it's so there, the appendices.
This is what I'm saying. If that letter, and when you take me in that letter, you confuse it. Because what Msenero wrote was to remind the Minister of Finance that this is an emergency. Scientists haven't received money. I have another letter which was followed by the permanent secretary saying, reference the letter that was written by the Msenero. I want to argue that you expedite the release of this money. Now, when you take me on that, we have not yet completed the accountability.
No, let's first conclude.
So let's first complete that, because the public is interested in knowing how much money got lost. Because when you come here and make an allegation that 50 billion, 128 billion, that is whoever makes that allegation.
Can you
because
maintain the civil language?
No, I will not maintain, because describes a person who makes a the amount of money that was released was 31 billion shillings. And I've just told you.
What about money that was released in the following financial year, 2020?
And this is the challenge. This investigation, by the time they had committed sending up people to go and investigate, had the budget been released?
Yeah. This is in November 2021.
And you see, that is where I say, when you are going to interview somebody, get a background information.
When is the budget released?
Money in July, Mr. Elioda, July, up to July 21, Honorable Elioda hadn't handed over. The permanent secretary by July had been fired. The Ministry of Science and Technology had been dissolved. Are we together on that one? That would imply that there was no organization called Ministry of Science and Technology. In fact, that follows the letter which Msenero wrote to Minister of Finance. He says in that letter, I don't know whether you've come across, because I've seen it. I've seen that letter. She says, we are in a process of receiving money. You know when the year ends, on the 31st of July. But the permanent secretary for this ministry has been changed from Minister of Science and Technology to the Office of the President. The current minister was dropped. He hasn't handed over. The structure of the new ministry has not yet been established. In that letter, I argue that you hold the money until when I get a structure from the permanent secretary. That implies that between July 31st, and you can go and check and do your background check, there was no money released to that ministry until December 18th. Until December 18th last year. But remember, the terms of reference for this committee was for 2 weeks, 14 days. From the time when this was instituted, it was 2 weeks. But most importantly is that there was no money, there was no ministry, there was no structure. Msenero had been appointed a minister, but the public service hadn't issued a new structure. And that's the information I wanted to let you know. Before you go and say, what about the money that was released in 2021 and 2022? Now, if you want to audit money for 2022, you can only start auditing that money in January 2022. I don't know whether you understand, because the money was released.
I have a head, Dr. Wakida. I'm not incapable of understanding. The committee, by the time the money was released, if it is December, was still investigating. And its investigation included that money, which is in the report as 140 billion.
You
right?
see, and you see, me, I want this young girl to understand. My
No.
I want the total 140 billion shillings. Listen to this statement from the same people who wrote the statement. They say, out of 140 billion shillings, it's here, if you have read their report, only 67 billion had been released. By the time they completed it's in their table. The table is here. Now, when you talk about 140, you see, budgeting, you get a budget. When you get a budget from Parliament, it is sent to Minister of Finance. When the Minister of Finance gets a budget, it determines the schedules of releasing the money. And it is here, Mr. Ogalo, you can see, in their report, this is not my report, only 64, in fact, in one of their recommendations.
Dr. Wakida,
yes.
The reason I brought in the money of 2021, 2022 is because you are insisting that we should look at 31 billion.
You see, when you confuse the listeners, even in that report, their focus, the only money they are focusing on, which Msenero is responsible, is 31 billion, 31.3 billion shillings under preside. And I have just told you that preside entered into an MOU with the Minister of Science and Technology, and they agreed on the roles. The role number one of the Ministry of Science and Technology was financial management. To advise preside.
Role number one of preside was accountability.
No.
Which is one of the things.
You see, I feel so bad when a presenter becomes uninformed. Because I have it here. Do you have it there?
Yes, I do have it.
Where?
I do have it. And I'm going to read it.
Where is it?
We all have the report of the committee, right?
No.
Does the committee have it as an appendix? Yes or no?
I want to give the council to read.
No. I am going now to bring in the council. we are not going to have this monologue and your
I want to give,
of course,
I want to give
your condescending tone.
I want
Honorable Wandera, you have heard what Wakida say. Now, if you ask me, he picks out things that favor what the narrative he's advancing. That same report talks about mismanagement of preside. It's in the report that there has been mismanagement, that preside was marred by mismanagement, poor planning, and those sorts of things. The same report talks about money that was the cross virements that were unauthorized by preside. The same report even has a letter from the permanent secretary of Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation asking for accountability from preside.
You see,
but also the other thing is, for us as Ugandans, we want to know, money was released for COVID vaccine.
Yes.
We have never seen COVID vaccine after 2 years.
Okay.
Now, no. Both issues are valid.
That's very valid.
Honorable Ogalo, for you, I want you to come in at that point. From what Dr. Wakida said, and I am not biased, I want to take exception of your bias accusations, young girl accusations. That will not help us here. What's your view about this issue?
Well, from what I've seen, from what I've heard Mr. Wakida say, he's raising issues of accusations apparently against Dr. Musenero about 31 billion.
Yes.
That's how I've understood him. And he's saying, look here, out of that 31, 15 purchased
15.7
purchased
equipment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other 15
went to operational costs.
And it was disbursed
by Ministry of Science.
the Ministry of Science and Technology.
Yes.
So my understanding of where he's coming from is that you cannot hold Dr. Musenero accountable for this money because she had no role. I don't know whether I'm getting it correct.
No. Let me clear that. Musenero's role in their MOU was one, to ensure that whoever received the money accounts to the Ministry of Science and Technology. And I will state here, Honorable Ogalo, that all the money that was released to the scientists, the 13.1 billion shillings, were 100% accounted for. I don't know whether you've read the Auditor General's report.
So let me understand. Yes. You are saying there was a memorandum of understanding and between the ministry and
the preside.
And the preside.
And Musenero, practically.
And it was upon Dr. Musenero to ensure
that these people account.
They account for the other 15.
And that makes her responsible for the money that goes to the science.
Wait a minute. You see, this is what I want to clear. And until when you understand this, Musenero did not receive cash. Musenero's role in this thing was to ensure that the science that received the money accounts to Ministry of Science and Technology. Because Ministry of Science and Technology gave a responsibility to Musenero. Please make sure the science account.
What I'm asking Mr. Wakida, and he's a lawyer, he can help us. Does that make Musenero responsible for the money given to scientists? Yes or no?
You see, I don't know whether you've done projects. There is no money. First, let me say this here clear. There is no money that was given to scientists that got lost. All of the money that the Ministry of Science and Technology released to the scientists is accounted for 100%. The only money that is missing in this, and I think this is the confusion that is there, is that out of the 31 billion shillings, 2 billion shillings is missing.
No, before we get there,
yes.
I think the point which she seems to be putting forward is for us to make a decision on this question of responsibility
Very good.
for the amount of
Very
money.
good.
Did Dr. Musenero have any responsibility to ensure that the money is accounted?
That we have value for money even.
I absolutely 100%.
So we go to the next question.
Yes.
Did she do it?
She did her part, and she gave all the accountability. All the money is released by Ministry of Science and Technology.
Okay, then back to Ogalo.
You get the point? So the question we are looking here is, who has the money? You release the money, isn't it? And the Ministry of Science and Technology, its responsibility was to ensure that there is a proper management of funds. That was a responsibility, strongly written in the MOU. But the point I'm trying to put here is that did the money that the Ministry of Science and Technology released the science, did it get lost? Or the money that we are discussing, the 2 billion shillings, was it released the scientists? And the answer, I will tell you, no. It wasn't released. Because all of the money that was released the scientists is accounted. You can see the trail, you can see the FTS. Now, if you have done your research, and this is what I said, the committee was incompetent, and I will repeat it here. They don't show that this variance of 2 billion shillings was released from Ministry of Finance. Because this money came from Ministry of Finance, it came to Ministry of Science and Technology, and EFTs were done. Now, what I have investigated and found is that there are 2 scenarios here. Either these 2 billion shillings is still in the Ministry of Finance. That's one theory. And it hasn't been released to Ministry of Science and Technology. Or the 2 billion shillings, which we are discussing here, out of the 31 billion shillings, was released to Ministry of Science and Technology, and it was eaten.
Yes. Now, that's where I want to come in.
Yes.
But there appears to be some issues on accountability.
Around there.
And that there is 2 billion which
unaccounted
is unaccounted for, and so on.
And
but
we don't know who should have accounted.
No. Let me finish this point. And I think there is a bigger problem.
There is a bigger problem.
And for me, the bigger problem should be seen from the perspective of the committee saying that this whole thing was illegal.
Yeah.
That it should never have been done that way.
Absolutely.
That's why we are having problems of now accountability. Because if we had had the usual structures, I don't think we'd be having this problem of accountability. Wait. Let me finish. I think the committee finishes its report by saying that and what would it mean if an institution like a preside is illegal? It means that there are no mechanisms, there are no regulations for accountability. So now you have MOUs between the preside and the ministry.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, accountability is supposed to be that of the PS. Now, when you come and superimpose another body in between, you're going to have all these issues. Yes, let me hear you, Agatha.
Yes, Honorable Ogalo, I wanted to tell you that in that MOU, so Ministry of Science and Technology knew it was preside that was supposed to spearhead this research. Entered an MOU with them that we will get money and give it out, but account for that money. The last point of under the responsibilities of MOU of that MOU of preside was account for the funds that have been released to you. Yeah. Now, I thought that would give us a direction of where accountability should come from. Let me finish. Let me finish. There is a letter from Ebong, this then Secretary PS of Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation, asking. It was written to Dr. Musenero herself that there hasn't been any accountability. That man repeated that to the committee, that Dr. Musenero did not account for the money. That in fact, Dr. Musenero asked for more money before accounting, because that was the agreement, that first spend this money, account for us how it has gone, how it has been utilized, and come for more money. Now, that MOU, if it is like that, for you as Honorable Wandera, does it place any responsibility for accountability or value for money, ensuring we have value for money on anyone? in the 3 or 4 entities that we are dealing with.
I think Dr. Wakida has considered that.
I have told you.
Wait first. I think Dr. Wakida has...
No, he hasn't.
No, wait
Who
first.
is responsible?
No, I thought where we came from, we said there was an MOU, and we agreed that there was a responsibility...
On who?
On Dr. Msenero.
To collect.
Yes.
To
Correct.
Because she was given that responsibility.
Yes.
For me, that side I've left it there. When I talk about a bigger picture, I am talking about what even the committee talks about. This is a question of governance. Should we even have had preside? Should it have been there in the first place?
So now that it was there and money was alleged,
Yeah,
the 2 billion that they say was mismanaged, what should we do about that?
Agatha, if you do not examine the root problem.
Yes.
For me, the root problem was even the creation of preside itself.
Which was chaired by Dr. Msenero.
Yes, that was, for me, and the committee says it is an illegality. Because you are having parallel, and we are having this in our country too often. You are having different people doing the same thing.
The committee also says that. Yes.
Yes, the committee says that. And because of that, you have these issues now we have. Because who is supposed to have been in charge of this thing? There is a ministry in place, Science and Technology. Why do you bring this preside and impose it on the ministry which is supposed to do this? I think even the committee has talked about a body which is regulated by an act of parliament. So for me, even before we look at these questions of accountability, the problems with that accountability is because you imposed a new way of accountability which is unknown. Because the person who is supposed to be accounting for everything is supposed to be the minister
and the permanent
secretary. Now, you come in and bring in somebody with an MOU. Who has ever heard about the public funds being spent through an
Absolutely.
MOU between a certain initiative and
now,
who has ever heard of that?
Honorable Ogalo, you are the lawyer in this house. You see, the people who are listening to us there want to know. Let us assume that the Minister of Science and Technology, the President, and the Minister of Finance erred in the formation of this preside. I want you to help the readers, the listeners, because this is the MOU that was made. To read section, areas of cooperation, but just to read specific,
just tell us
specific roles of each of these entities. Most Minister of Science and Technology will be held and keep, most will hold and keep and earmark the funding described in section 1 in the agreement. Most will release funds on the project by project basis to researchers, not to preside. And I want you to repeat that. Minister of Science and Technology will release this money. That is 2. 3, we will check to ensure that all supporting documents are set in place before the money is released, and that project implementation schedule clearly showing milestone for funding and tracking progress at each phase. 4.32, a payment schedule page, a payment schedule shall be paid to the milestone. 4.3, a clearance certificate shall be issued. That's
okay, those accountability procedures.
Now we go to specific roles of preside. Listen.
No, just a moment.
Yes.
Just a moment.
Yes.
Let's finish one by
Yes.
one. You have told us about the procedures.
Yes.
I think what Agatha is raising now is, let's first deal with this issue of there is money missing.
Absolutely.
2 billion.
Yes. And for me that is very important.
So we can agree, I think,
Yes.
that the committee has done some work.
And
it has found that there is 2 billion of the taxpayers' money which has not been accounted for.
Absolutely.
So the question is,
where is it?
Where, as the taxpayer,
where is that money?
As a taxpayer,
Yes.
whom should the taxpayer hold
accountable for this money?
And that's what I'm asking.
And
you know why I'm asking it?
Yes.
Dr. Wakida, has started and still says we have been making allegations. Now, it turns out, because the legal status of preside that we are talking about here, even Yona raised it on the floor of parliament when he raised these issues. So it turns out that the only allegation that was false is in the amounts of money.
But do you also know that Yona used to work in the ministry?
First wait, yes I do. Yes I do.
And do you know that Yona is one of those who set up preside? Are you aware? He was an assistant commissioner.
How? It's you read for us the background saying President Museveni.
The person you are talking about here called Mr. Yona was working as an assistant commissioner in the ministry.
By the way, we don't even care about Mr. Yona or even what he said. For us, we are looking at the report of parliament. However bad it was, it has shown us, it has brought us some points to look at. One, that money was indeed mismanaged.
Yes.
The only difference is in the amounts,
Yes.
right? Two, I can read more where we could actually pinpoint on who is actually responsible for this, which we are avoiding. Let me finish.
Your work is to ask questions.
No, it's not. You cannot mislead us and just ask questions.
Okay.
We know that there's a committee recommendation or observation saying that the preside chairperson acted irregularly in many instances.
I want pastors to stay on this money issue for at least 10 minutes. Please don't move away, because the public out there...
But it's on the money issue. For example, there is an issue of 1.4 billion that is said to have been spent on 7 staff of preside.
And you see, that is another problem. If you don't explain to the public that the payroll for preside was in State House, it will assume like the money you are looking for was sent to preside. The budget for the staff, and I think this is what you bring very clear. The money which was supposed to pay the staff of preside, the 7 staff, was never sent to preside. I asked this to Tony the other day. The money that was supposed to support the secretariat of preside was 3.5 billion shillings. It was sent directly to State House. The staff, wait, let me explain this, because Agatha needs to know this, that even the payroll that was paying preside, the appointment of the staff of preside was in State House. Now, if you are so ignorant and then you drive to preside and ask for a payroll where you did not send the money, where you know there is no payroll, then you lose it. And that's why I'm saying, yes, they were supposed to have gone to State House where the money, because all of the appointments for the staff are in the president's office. So go there. Did you go there? If you didn't go,
I think now the more we talk, the more problems are.
Yes, exactly.
Because now you are talking about the money for preside, some of it being in the State House.
Absolutely, 3.5.
The person of preside not being also responsible for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So as a person of preside, you have 7 members of staff, but you are not even responsible for their salaries.
Exactly.
So really, I want us to really understand this.
Yes.
Because you
ask very serious. This is where the issue is.
This is where we have big problems in this country.
Yes.
Why should a salary for Mr. Wakida, who is working
for preside,
be
paid
by
the State House?
For me, I will admit, I don't know that. The committee didn't say that.
And you
said it asked for appointment.
And you see, this is where the problem is. If you look at budget allocation, if you had paid attention to budget allocation, there was 31.3 billion shillings that was sent to Minister of Finance for preside. The support for the science of preside, the support for the preside staff was sent to State House. 3.5 billion shillings.
Why, by the way?
This is the question. This is the question. Why did they send the money there?
Dr. Museveni was in State House then as a presidential.
No. You see, Museveni is not the human resource person of State House. Yes.
There is a big point.
There is a big point there.
But the point now I'm making is, if Dr. Museveni
Yes.
at that time,
yes,
was working in the State House.
Yes.
Then it can now explain
Why?
again the money is being sent to State House. And for me, that is the problem, because I don't see why this memorandum of understanding with science and technology between
And preside.
and preside.
Yes.
They have their understanding how they are going to account for the money.
You see,
and then there is some money which is outside.
You see,
that memorandum
this
of
is what I want to explain, and I want everybody to pay attention to this. This is 3.5 billion. Is not part of the SATA 1.3 billion shillings. This was a vote of its own. It's not part of the SATA 1.3 billion shillings.
Okay.
You get the point? Okay. This money was a vote directly to the office of the president. To State House. I don't know whether you are aware of that. Me, I have done my groundwork. And nobody, I can talk here at ease. I have looked at the transfers. I have seen the money from Minister of Finance went straight. This money did not come from Minister of Science and Technology. The only money that came from Minister of Finance to Minister of Science and Technology was the 13 billion shillings, which went straight to the scientists.
So you mean to say the Minister of Finance was sending some money to Science and Technology, and at the same time sending some money to State House over the same activity?
It's not, let me clarify this again. This SATA 1 billion shillings, SATA 1.3 was a supplementary budget. SATA 1.3 billion shillings. During that time, they also passed a vote to State House under the State House budget. They sent out, not part of the SATA 1 billion shillings. In the MOU, it's written SATA 1.3 billion shillings. The SATA 1.3 billion shillings is accounted for properly. The person who is supposed to have been asked that we sent you 3.5 billion shillings to support the presiding secretariat, how much of that have you paid on the payroll? Would have been Msenero, because the money was not sent to an account called Msenero. It was sent to State House. State House was responsible for the appointment of these staff for preside. It paid them. Whoever appoints you pays you, isn't it? Now, when we sit here and we hold Msenero, for example, that you see because she was working there, the money wasn't sent on Msenero's account. You're a lawyer, you're a very intelligent woman, go and find that information. This was a vote sent to is it 001 or 002?
001 is State House?
Yes.
No, I understand
Yes.
where you are coming from.
Yes.
And I'm not suggesting that the money was sent to Msenero because she was working in a State House. My problem, issue is you have one activity.
Absolutely.
COVID.
Yes.
We have issues, big problems with COVID. It is finishing us. Minister of Finance, Parliament sits and says, yes, we must appropriate money. Good. Now, when the Minister of Finance prepares and takes this to Parliament to pass, some of the money for the same activity goes to Science and Technology, and some of the money goes to State House.
No, I think you need to get this. Parliament at appropriation time, look at the appropriation. SATA 1.3 billion shillings was clear to support preside scientists.
Yes.
You get the point. And another 3.5 billion. Yes.
And it went to the Minister of Science.
It went to the Minister of Science and Technology.
Correct.
Yes.
Then the same Parliament at the same time said, now here is 3.5. Let it go to State House. But these are dealing with the same activity. That's what is disturbing me.
The committee investigation was not restricted to the money that only went to the Ministry of Science and Technology. It was that's why it actually looked into that money. It was looking at the money that went into that activity. Whether it went to State House, whether it went where, that's what it was.
You see, the issue here, Professor, my brother, is that it is true the money was allocated to an accounting officer in the State House. Isn't it? It is also true that 31 billion shillings had been allocated for the purposes of COVID, and that money was sent to Ministry of Science and Technology. It is very clear in this report and many other documents that the 3.5 billion shillings it came into the supplementary budget for the State House, and it went directly to State House. Vote 001, and the other 31.3 had been allocated for Ministry of Science and Technology to manage.
So why didn't this 3.5 just go to
this is the dilemma. And that's the dilemma.
I think when we come, we will just finalize and really clarify to the viewer what this is about, because we can't just
you see, Agatha,
the Ugandan wants to understand.
Agatha, I am trying to help everybody understand that the allegation this man made was over 120 billion shillings. We have zeroed down to 2 billion shillings. That is missing, even in the report of Parliament. Yes. And I am saying this, that this was an electronic transfer. Can we see whether actually the money left Ministry of Finance? The report is quiet. Can we see if Ministry of Science, which was receiving all the monies, actually transferred this money to the scientist? The report is quiet. You see my point? And this is when, at that point, is when I think that the report is so important.
Okay, gentlemen, let's come back and conclude this issue and talk about something else. We'll be right back.
The Citizens Chat Room happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
Welcome back from that commercial break, and we are continuing with the issue that we're discussing here of the money that was allocated for COVID-related research. And I wanted us to clarify on this issue and really explain it better for the viewer before we leave it. So the committee found out that 100, if I am looking at these figures right, the allocated money, I'm not going to talk about what hasn't been released yet, but the allocated money is 10 billion in 2019-2020 financial year, 37 billion in 2020-2021, and also what has been allocated in the current financial year is 147 billion. And on that, Dr. Wakida says only 60 has been released so far. Yeah,
67.
Yes. So the committee, and what we are really talking about is that the committee was investigating, was this money put to the use it was intended to?
Yes.
And if not, who is responsible?
Very good.
So Dr. Wakida and I think here the disagreement has been on who is responsible. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Wakida was explaining that Dr. Msenero was supposed to account for the money sent to the scientists.
Absolutely.
There were 23 projects put under that research.
Yes.
In the 23 projects, the committee says 8 have stalled.
Yes.
Only 15 are said to be under good progress.
Yes.
Now, in the 8 that have stalled, some of them, some money was reallocated to other activities, while others, they say it wasn't released yet. And I think one more where money, the committee didn't know where it is yet. The 15 that they say is on good progress. I think most of the COVID-19 vaccines are on clinical stages. Somewhere they are preclinical, I think. Now, the committee talks about an issue of this was supposed to be an emergency. Yes? Was this something that we should have waited for 2 years? If we were to count on that vaccine, how many people would it have saved by now? What I wanted Dr. Wakida to clarify on that, who is responsible for the progress of these projects, for the stalled projects, for value for money? Money was put out there to do something that was needed as an urgent intervention. Okay. Yes. And let's clarify that and move on to the next.
I want to start from the point of responsibility.
Yes.
The Musenero's point of accountability in all this, in terms of money, because I want to give 2 stages of accountability. In regards to accounting to the physical money, Musenero's responsibility was to ensure that all monies that are released by Ministry of Science and Technology is accounted for. And in this report, it is clear that all monies that were released by Ministry of Science and Technology is accounted for. To who was Msenero supposed to give that accountability? That accountability was supposed to be given to Ministry of Science and Technology. That one we have no question that accountability was there. The overall accountability for the 31 billion shillings is the work of Ministry of Science and Technology. So when Msenero collects the accountability from the different participating agencies, she passes them to Ministry of Science and Technology. Ministry of Science and Technology is the one which accounts the Auditor General. And by the way, I don't know whether you have read the auditor report.
I have.
On the Ministry of Science and Technology. There is no query on all the monies that Msenero says it was released. The query here, and if you get this point, you will know where the dichotomy of the problem is. That there is 2 billion shillings. According to Msenero, there was no money released called 2 billion shillings to the scientists. Therefore, she could not collect any accountability. In fact, there is a letter which she wrote to the permanent secretary, Mr. Bong, saying that the scientists need money now. Many of them are calling, they have bought reagents, but they don't have money. In that letter, Mr. Bong responds and says, we did not get all the 5 billion which was remaining. We got 3,150,000,000. We haven't got the other balance. Now, that is the 2 billion which is missing. And I have told you, if you are interested in this, is first ask, did the 2 billion leave Ministry of Finance to Ministry of Science and Technology? Because all the monies weren't going to Msenero. All the money was released from Ministry of Finance direct to Ministry of Science. So the question is, could it be that actually the 2 billion never left Ministry of Finance? Could it be that the 2 billion left Ministry of Finance, went to Ministry of Science and Technology, and didn't got the scientist? Because the confusion here is when people talk about Msenero and preside, it sounds as if Msenero was receiving the money and then distributing to the scientists. That was not the case. The Ministry of Science got a list of scientists and was responsible for distributing this money. Now, can the Ministry of Science, the accounting officer or Minister of Science, if she ever confirms and provides, like she provided these are the payment receipt forms, and provide to the public that, oh, I released this money to account X. I released also this money to account B. I released this money to account X. Then we will hold Msenero responsible. But there is no trace of that money. And the reason why I have said that this report would have been better, because if you reach at that point, in the current situation, people don't carry money. Money moves from account X to account Y. Now, why don't you show that these 2 billion shillings left Ministry of Finance, went to Ministry of Science and Technology, and this is how the Ministry of Science distributed. Now, if the scientists received that money, then Msenero would be responsible. If Ministry of Science and Technology received that money and it hasn't distributed the scientists, then the Ministry of Science and Technology is responsible for that money. If the money hasn't left Ministry of Finance, it is still there. That is the kind of investigation, hard data, I would have expected.
Okay.
Are we together on that one? That is where the problem was in this report.
Thank you, Dr. Wakida. Honorable Wandera Ogalo, you have heard what Dr. Wakida says about that money. When you read that report, you will see where they are saying that Dr. Msenero refused to account to the Ministry of Science and Technology despite reminders.
Before that,
but can I finish?
Yes, I need that question.
There's a letter,
yes,
on the appendices of the report,
yes,
from Mr. Bong,
yes,
the then
yes,
PS, to Dr. Msenero,
yes,
about accounting.
Yes.
What does that
and let me first explain before you go to Ogalo, because I have taken my time to understand this. There was a reminder letter, which I also have a copy, from Ebon to Msenero, saying that we are running short of time to do accountability. In response, Msenero said, I am collecting the accountability from various scientists. I beg you to give me 1 day. The following, after that day, there is a letter accompanying all of the accountability. That explains why that accountability of all of the money that was released is not in question. The Auditor General has finished. In fact, when you read the first draft of the Auditor General, it talks about that. When you read the final audit, which I would urge you to read, it clears that. The only money which is missing here is the money that was never released to the scientists, not the money that was released to the scientists. So accountability delays can be, for example, if somebody received the money in December for a project, it is prudent that by January and February, that person is in the field. 2, that money you received in December was supposed to have been given to you in June, the previous year, but you have received it in December. It is very much possible that by the time you are asking me 3 months later, I have only done 2 activities, or I am in the field. You get my point. So there was a mistake, and I see that recommendation that there were financial delays, disbursement of money to the science. Because if you were supposed to have sent the money to the scientists in June, and the scientists are getting the money in December, but you're asking the scientists to give you accountability in March, of course there is a problem there.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
by now, okay.
Honorable,
Yes.
and this should be your last views on this so that we move to the next issue.
The question you are raising about the report, I think at page 5, the committee says Preside did not account to the ministry, despite several reminders there too, and instead the projects directly accounted to the Ministry of Science and Technology. That is the one place where they faulted, where they faulted Preside. Then also, they also on page 6 said the chairperson of Preside authorized the environment of resources across projects without following due process. Again, there they are following Preside for that. I think where the committee is coming from, I don't read the committee as saying that that Dr. Msenero took money.
Absolutely.
They didn't say that.
I don't read them saying that. I think they are faulting her for doing things such as reallocations without authority. That is my reading on the question of accountability. Now, on your bigger question of value for money. And this is 67 billion shillings of the taxpayers' money which went out. Did we get value for money? For this money? True, we were having a COVID, we wanted solutions. So the question to me, which we should be asking ourselves was this the best kind of response for the country?
That's the question.
Did we do so? Because I have seen, for example, at page 2, that a supplementary request of Uganda shillings 50.4 billion for a manufacturing plant. If this money was released, the question which comes to me, why would you be buying a manufacturing plant before you are even sure about your research? I'm now addressing the question.
Why would you be releasing this money or asking for money?
Asking for it when you are still at research level.
Very good.
You wanted to build a plant. You don't even know whether your research will be successful.
Let me explain at that point, my counsel. No, because it's important for people to understand these things. This 50 billion shillings appeared in the budget of 2022-2023. 2023. It's not that it had been released. It is actually part of the 128 billion which these people are talking about. So it's important for people to understand that. Why
fine.
are you asking for that money when you have not done anything? In this report, it mentions that the next phase is pre-clinical trials. Pre-clinical trials. In fact, when you read their recommendation, they say science should be given money. They don't question the fact that there is progress. The only thing that I hear people ask is, what was the value for money? When you want to understand this, you want to go in the timeline. The first year of all these projects was a setup year. Buy equipment, set up, and start, isn't it? That's why in the second year they ask for things like factories.
Yeah, but Mr. Wakida.
Yes.
For a taxpayer out there,
yes,
asking himself whether there is a value for money.
Yes.
In the 2022, did you say 2022?
2022-23.
23.
Yes.
Somebody is asking for 50 billion
yes.
to buy a manufacturing plant.
Yes.
Look at this taxpayer out there. He'll be asking
himself, what are they doing?
What for?
Absolutely.
They have been at this thing for 3 years.
Our people died.
They have been in this thing for 1 year.
We are still.
Let us clarify on this. Agatha, Preside was started
in 2020.
2020, which month?
May.
Yes. So that would imply that by the time they are passing a budget of 2022, 2023, they will have passed 1 year. By the time they are presenting this, and they are saying we are now moving into a pre-trial mode. If people don't understand research is constructed in a sense that you must have a beginning.
So for me, Mr. Wakida,
yes,
my conclusion on this
yes.
is that this whole thing, there is really no value for
money. Yes.
That's my conclusion. And I would actually support the position of the committee, the conclusion. Disband Preside, put it under the relevant,
very good,
very relevant program, which is supported by even by an act of parliament.
That, and I went ahead to look at what is the new focus. Preside no longer exists. I heard her say she's still the chairperson. Preside in the new frame of that ministry. I don't know whether you've looked at the structure. It was disbanded. It is now referred as the pathogen economy. Coordinated.
Was Preside part of the ministry structure?
This is what I'm saying. It was disbanded. It's now in the new structure. You remember, between June last year and December, the Ministry of Public Service was working on the structure. The president, I'm told, is the one which gave that structure. And this thing you call Preside no longer exists. There is no thing called Preside. It was, if you look, can you read the MOU between the
But that again is frightening.
Yes.
You mean this thing is not there which ate all this money?
This is what I'm telling you. The MOU, the Ministry of Science and Technology had with Preside was for 1 year. Have you read that?
Yes.
Now, after 1 year, it was supposed to be incorporated into the Ministry of Science. Remember, Museveni at that time had abolished the other thing.
Then let's agree that the setting up of this whole initiative
was wrong.
Was bad.
Yes.
It has cost the taxpayer.
Gentlemen, let's leave this subject because, and like I said, for me, the takeaway, if I was the viewer, would be that money was allocated to do something we needed urgently, and it has not been done yet. Now, let us find out why the committee talks about the delays in the research, but also the value for money you are talking about. And I'm glad to announce that the investigation, if the committee did a bad job, like Dr. Wakida says,
there is
going to the IGG.
Yes, it's going to IGG.
So maybe at the end of the day, we will find out what exactly went wrong with this particular activity. But before, let's agree with you, Wakida, that something went wrong.
No, you see, I have no problem. I'm saying there was a problem. If you you are not finding 2 billion shillings, then there is a problem. That is
Okay.
true.
Okay. So our next topic that we have eaten its time, but we can just talk about it briefly. There's information that Parliament has, in the last 1 year, increased staff by 177 members of staff in just 1 year. We have never seen an advert in the papers, as the employment laws require, and even the Administration of Parliament Act and the staff regulations, advertising these positions. There's another issue of procurement that there was supposed to be procurement of vehicles, and the contract was between Parliament and Toyota. When this Parliament started, the Speaker, I think the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, then wanted vehicles, and Toyota could not, told them it could not supply vehicles at that particular moment. And the leadership of Parliament said, we can't wait for Toyota, we have to get another one. Yeah. So that issue has gone on and led to the recent dissolution of the Contracts Committee in Parliament. Now, the Contracts Committee, the law says it should have a term of 3 years. The 3 years had not expired. When they wrote to the PSST, who is supposed to approve the new nominated committee, he asked them why they had dissolved the other committee, because it is irregular. The law clearly states how the contract committee should be dissolved, or the members should be exited before the end of their term. And one of them is being incapacitated. The other one is being, I think one of them is abuse of office, but that wasn't the case with this one. And Honorable Ogalo, it's the main reason I wanted you on this panel to explain to us if that is how Parliament should be running.
I think on the first one, recruitment, the law is quite clear. Section 15 of the Administration of Parliament Act reads that the Commission may cause to be published in the Uganda Gazette or elsewhere invitations to persons to apply for appointment, promotion, or transfer to any vacant office in the service. And it is required that in that notice in the Uganda Gazette, it will specify certain things, such as the salaries, the age, the qualifications, the age, or the normal things you put up. So as far as the law is concerned, there is a process for recruitment. Now, what did you, I can possibly share what we did when I served as a commissioner in the 6th Parliament.
Yes.
Things of recruitment normally attract a lot of suspicion, a lot of accusations, a lot of people think there is bias and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, when I served on the commission under the chairmanship of the late Wakida, we decided to outsource recruitment. It's Management Institute.
Yeah, UMI.
Yeah, UMI. We gave the whole thing to UMI. You advertise, you carry out, first of all, shortlist, carry out interviews, make your recommendations with what every person has got. When we will only look at your recommendation and see the marks you have given and so on, and then we'll do that. We really, as a commission, we really didn't involve into direct recruitment. We outsourced. We had it when I was in the commission, we did it twice. The second time we outsourced to Public Service Commission. All this was to protect Parliament from the commission being accused of underhand methods of recruitment and so on. So why would you, if you've outsourced it to UMI, and they have given you they have given you a brief on each candidate. We found, in fact, at the end of the day, we found ourselves just adopting what had been recommended, both for UMI and the Public Service Commission. So I just want to share with you that for us, that's how we approached it.
Yes.
That the commission distanced itself from recruitment. It is simply approved what technical people had given to us. Now, I would advise really that in order to avoid accusations, in order to avoid all those, that you should really maybe do something which puts you above board. Secondly, parliaments normally have strategic plans, 5-year strategic plans. I believe Parliament of Uganda has, which would say what they want to do in the next 5 years. How many members of staff, employees do they want to add? So you do normally revert to that strategic plan to justify the recruitment. So I do not know what is happening now. I have no knowledge of the recruitment systems they use, but that is just to share with you my thoughts about it. On the second issue of the tender board,
Yes.
that is section 23. It empowers establishment of a tender board, and then the regulations are made thereunder. Of course, if the regulations say you cannot sack someone without a reason, you must follow that. It is
it's a regulation.
It is just a regulation. It is law. So I would expect that the commission would really will continue acting within the confines of its own regulations, because those regulations, it is the commission, it is us, the commission in the 6th Parliament, which made them, and you'd expect that they would abide by it. That's what I would say about the contracts
they are
committee.
not abiding by them, because like I have told you, I think the new contracts committee was put in place, started on 4th May, and I have failed to get a letter that they responded to the PSST with to see what reasons they gave. But it also brings in the issues of procurement. That one of the reasons was that the leadership of Parliament wanted to bring in companies that are not those that they have running contracts with to supply certain things, especially, I think mainly now their vehicles. They want vehicles for the State of the Nation address. Dr. Wakida, you are a researcher and all. We have PPDLOs that talk about procurement and where that contracts committee is essential. What does this say about the administration of Parliament currently?
Agatha, I would concede I haven't spent time to try to understand how Parliament of Uganda does its procurement and the administration.
Isn't procurement generally guided
generally
by...
What I know is that before you contract somebody under that guide of the law, that person must have a certificate from PPDA.
Yes.
You must be a registered member of that. But I also know that you who is contracting, one of the requirements you require is that certificate from the person you are contracting. Short of that, you've of course broken the law. I don't know how these procurements are done in Parliament for things like car suppliers, but I would assume that the people running that Parliament are competent enough to understand that they have to follow the law. Where they haven't followed, and I don't want to speculate that they have not followed because I haven't really followed this issue, then they can be culpable. Perhaps there is sourcing, sourcing. It's allowed in PPDA.
Under certain conditions.
Under certain condition. It is possible that some of these things are under that provision, depending on the justification they are giving. Now, recruitment of staff, and I think we've been discussing it here, that how did we, for example, in Preside, how did the State House go recruit the staff? Recruitment of staff of any public entity.
We even don't know if it is State House
requires,
that recruited or Preside.
Requires,
no, we don't.
Requires a public publication. The whole objective of that is that so you give opportunities to all Ugandans. And the law assumes that we are all equal as long as we have the qualification for that particular job. Now, if you don't publish, unless if you are looking for specialized skills, because it's possible, you are looking for specialized skills and you know that it will take you long to get these skills, so you can go sourcing. I think the law allows you that. But if you are looking at
it doesn't.
Sourcing is allowed.
No, as far as the Administration of Parliament Act and the regulations when they are under concerned, there is no room.
There's only room for contracts.
For contracts, and then it is.
I have done a lot of work for the Parliament, by the way. But I also know that the qualification for me to get those jobs is that they advertised. I applied. I was given minimum requirements. One of the requirements is that you must be taxpayer. So you must have a tax identification. You must have a trading license. You must have your articles of association already incorporated. And you must demonstrate your skills. Now, then the certificate from PPDA is a requirement. Now, I would be surprised that there are people who have worked with Parliament for a number of years. As the research world, we do the policy reviews for both the opposition and government. And therefore, you know that's the requirement. Now, when Agatha is talking about that there is something which is unlawful, I wouldn't fault Parliament at this point until when I've seen that. Because in this country, we have a tendency to speculate, to run with media rumors without getting the truth. And I would be therefore saying that if I had interested myself in this topic, I would be able to give an informed position.
Before you mislead our viewers that here on this show we speculate and run with rumors, I will share with you letters. Some of them are already public. A letter dissolving the contracts committee, a letter nominating the new members of the contracts committee, and a letter from the PSST asking what the urgency was to dissolve a committee before they finished their terms. And like I've told you, the contracts committee, the regulations of PPDA don't allow that. There has to be a reason.
You see, Agatha, that is correct. And I've said if there was any error, then whatever the decision they take should follow that law. Whatever decision. I'll give an example. The reason why Chris Obore then was terminated was because they argued that they did not follow the procedure of the recruitment. That means that the Parliament is aware of what's supposed to do. Now, what I am saying is that I, as a person, until when I have seen, you can see, you hadn't shared this information. Perhaps if you had shared this information, I would be informed. But in absence of that, I would think that the Parliament has the very competent people to start making those mistakes. And if they have made those mistakes, then definitely they should be held accountable.
Okay, gentlemen, I will share the information, and next time we can, since today we really didn't have time to exhaust this, we can discuss it. Your final remarks on these issues that
I will start by saying, in my final remark, is that the public should know, in my summary, that Musenero's responsibility was to collect accountability for the money released by Minister of Science and Technology, and that all the accountability for that was given to Minister of Science and Technology. And it's reflected in the current Auditor General's report. That's one. Two, I also want to emphasize that the committee did a job. They found that there were 2 billion shillings, but they fell short to tell us where did that money came from, because the money was coming from 3 levels. The money was coming from Minister of Finance to Minister of Science, and then Minister of Science distributes this money. Now, what is remaining, and it's good that the Parliament actually sent this thing to the Auditor General, or the IGG, is to establish, did these 2 billion shillings leave the Minister of Finance? If it left and it came to Minister of Science and Technology, did it leave to any account that we can trace? Because that is when we would be saying, this money, you can see it went to so and so. As of now, that is a black hole, and we need to do that. Okay. Then on this procurement thing, it is important that we abide by the law we make. As people of Uganda, once you construct an act and require everybody to abide by it, and then you go and do the contract in a manner that Agatha is explaining, for me, that contravenes the very law for which my friend here spent time writing. Yes. And it's just right that such contracts are revoked.
Thank you, Dr. Wakida. We are known in this country, the norm is not to follow the law. Following the law is actually the exception. But Honorable Ogalo, your last remarks.
I'll take over. I'll begin there. Following the law is so important. It is what holds society together. Yes. Once you don't follow it, you yourself who are not following, you are standing on quicksand. You also sink. From both discussions we have had, unfortunately,
there is
both are tending towards showing that the rule of law can be ignored. But as we go on ignoring the rule of law, it comes to haunt us.
Yes.
It comes back to haunt us. So for me, the first thing I would say here is it is the best that the rulers and us the ruled are both subject to the same laws.
Yeah.
It is both in the interest of the rulers, and in fact it is more in the interest of the rulers. They're the ones who would want people to obey the law.
They say it's for order.
If you do not set that example, and the rest of the Ugandans choose to disobey the law, you the rulers are the ones who are going to be in bigger trouble.
Yes.
So for me, from both episodes we've had here, putting in place preside, which the committee has found illegal, means that the law was not followed.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
What you are raising, and unfortunately, this is coming from the highest office of the land.
The lawmakers themselves.
Then the second one, the example you are raising is also coming from Parliament.
Yes.
Now, we should live by example.
Yes.
The office of the president is the fountain of honor. We all follow it. So if it gives us an example of following the law, the rest will do so. Now we are here discussing all this because of failure to follow the law. Lastly, I think the committee has done its work. The way I understand it is that the committee, just to use the example of 2 billion,
yes,
has found that there is a problem. The taxpayer has lost it 2 billion shillings. Now it is upon the executive
to find out,
to come back to Parliament and say, yes, you were right. This 2 billion was lost in such and such circumstances.
Absolutely.
Or it wasn't lost, it is here.
Yeah.
So for me, I think Parliament has done it, the committee has done its part. Let the executive respond.
The IGG.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, our time is fast.
Can I make one comment?
No, Dr. Wakida, you're the reason we've spent more than 2 hours here, but we will return, and if there's anything more we need to clarify on that issue, we can always do that. Thank you very much, viewers. From us, it's a nice weekend. Till next weekend.